Massive Entertainment recently released the next generation upgrade for the Division 2 and it runs best on Xbox. So with the recent release of the next generation upgrades for the Division 2, it has brought with it features that vastly improve the overall experience of the game, especially on the Xbox consoles. Now, before we get into this any further, if you are new here and you enjoy what you see throughout this video, you find it entertaining, you find it informative, I would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button to join this channel, help it grow. My goal for this channel really is to just have an awesome community talking about Xbox, talking about video games. And if you want to join that ride, I'd really love to have you along. So the Division 2 has been an interesting game for me. I played it a little bit later than everybody, but I was able to play through the campaign. I played through Warlords of New York, all on the Xbox One X, and I have to say, the game overall, I enjoyed playing. However, my biggest pet peeve with the Division 2 was it felt kind of clunky with the 30 frames per second and the movement and everything. It just didn't feel as tight as I would have liked it to. And with this next generation upgrade, it completely fixes all of that. Now, there is a massive difference between the Xbox versions and the PlayStation 5 versions with this comparison. Now, the reason for this probably isn't because the Xbox is a more powerful console. It's probably because of some sort of bug or issue that Ubisoft has with the PlayStation 5 upgrade, but there is a significant difference, and I just wanted to talk about that. But firstly, with the resolutions, the Xbox Series S is running at 900p to 1080p. The Xbox Series X is running between 1800p and 2160p, so 4K, and then the PlayStation 5 is running between 1080p and 1890p. Now, obviously, yes, they're all dynamic resolutions, with the Xbox Series X getting the highest resolution of 4K and the PlayStation 5 only reaching 1890p, and the Series S at times on par with the PlayStation 5, which is interesting, especially because the big difference between these versions comes with the graphical settings and the fact that the PlayStation 5 is just missing a ton of graphical settings that are actually there and available on the Series S and the Series X. Now, the graphical settings that are missing, the biggest changes are the omissions of a volumetric lighting and atmospheric rendering, and this includes the fog effect streaming. Now, this is on the PlayStation 5 version only that it's missing, and for some reason, nobody knows really why. I think it's a bug. I think it's something that they did with the patch that they kind of screwed up and took away, because it is available on the PlayStation 4 Pro, but it does make a big difference in the way that the game looks. And the game, from the video that they were showing and from the screenshots, it does look significantly worse than the Xbox version because it doesn't have these effects. And on top of that, they're also missing the screen space reflections on the PS5. Again, makes no sense because it is available on the PlayStation 4 Pro. And there's a lot of theories going into this. Some people think it could be the backwards compatibility issues with the PS5. One thing that comes to mind is that if you remember back before the consoles released, the Assassin's Creed games had some backwards compatibility issues with the PS5, going from the PS4 to the PS5, where they weren't having those issues with the Xbox versions. And maybe there's something at Ubisoft where they're having trouble dealing with the SDK for the PS5 compared to the Xbox consoles. Now, these comparisons in general, they're great just to kind of take a deeper dive and look at how the games run and compare between the two consoles. But again, these are still last generation games. There's going to be hiccups. They may not always run smoothly when they're transferring them over. And do they really mean that much comparing them now in the overall terms of how powerful these consoles are? I don't think so. At the end of the day, I still think the Xbox is the most powerful console just by looking at the specs, just by on paper. It makes the most logical sense. And I think going forward with next generation games, it's going to prove that. We've already seen with things like ray tracing, with things like the control photo mode, when the high graphic intensive stuff kicks in, the Xbox performs better. It just does because it has a better GPU. But what else is interesting here is the actual loading times between these versions of the games. On the Xbox Series X, it is 10 seconds faster than the PlayStation 5, whereas the PS5 is only 6 seconds faster than the Xbox One X, and the Xbox Series S is also faster than the PS5. And this is another thing I don't fully understand. I'm not the biggest technical person, but technically, since the PS5 has the better and faster SSD, shouldn't it be loading these things faster even when it's in backwards compatibility mode? And from reading the comments on this post, I think that I'm kind of correct on that. And maybe this person's completely off base, but they say here that Xbox Velocity architecture isn't available under backwards compatibility. All you're seeing here is raw NVMe and CPU performance. So you'd think because of that raw NVMe performance that the PS5 would be loading it faster. And this person's asking for an explanation with the response, and they say, by all accounts, the PS5 SSD should be faster under backwards compatibility and Xbox faster under Gen 9 native. If I had to theorize why here, it would be a combination of better CPU for the Xbox, as well as how the Xbox SSD provides 100% locked consistent performance while the PS5 does not. So I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that is the case, but this to me has me mind boggled why the PS5 version is loading so much slower than the Xbox Series X. But besides that, if you're playing the Division 2 on the X or the S, you're going to have an awesome time. I've sunk in at least 10 to 15 more hours into this game since the next generation upgrade, and I can honestly say I'm having a great time with it. Playing it at 60 frames per second makes such a big difference. I don't think I can ever go back to playing shooters at least at 30 frames per second. I just don't think it will ever feel the same again, and it'll be such a bad experience when having to revert back to games that are still locked at 30 FPS. But the biggest thing I take away out of all of this is, like this guy says here, backwards compatibility has been such an incredible feature of the Xbox. I'm playing old games that look like they've been remastered to the auto HDR feature and the frame rate boost. And I think for me, the best feature on the Xbox Series X, which has made the Series X potentially going to be up there as my favorite console of all time. And I know you're thinking the console has just came out, how can you come to that conclusion? But in terms of my experience on a console, the Series X has blown me away, especially with the backwards compatibility. The fact that I throw in a 360 game or an Xbox One game and it instantly upgrades like the load times, it instantly upgrades the auto HDR, that kind of stuff has blown me away. It's such a great experience, and until you start seeing the difference between like playing the game on a 360 and then popping it into your Series X and seeing how much better it looks, you're not really going to understand what I mean. And I think this is just another example of the Xbox backwards compatibility at work and how well it does with older games, because technically the versions and the coding of this game are still the Xbox One or the Xbox One X and the PlayStation 4 Pro versions of this game. So it really is just running off backwards compatibility with all of this additional upgraded frame rates and the better resolutions. So all in all, for the Xbox, this is a great upgrade, not so much for the PlayStation 5. I do think it's going to be upgraded via a patch eventually. But to me, the conclusion out of this is just how great the backwards compatibility is on the Xbox. And I think that's going to continue to show its strength going forward throughout the entire generation. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Do you think the issues with the PlayStation 5 version are solely due to a bug and this will be patched going forward? Have you been playing the Division 2 on the Xbox Series X or S? What do you think about the next generation upgrade? I love to hear all of your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you're new here and you liked what you see throughout this video, I would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button to help this channel grow, help grow this community. It does mean a lot, all the support that I have been getting. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for your support. I'll catch you in the next video.